Hey, nature photographers, it's Lee Hoy, and I'm coming to you from my hotel room again in Jackson Hole, Wyoming. I've been up here leading my Grand Teton and Winter workshop. It's been a phenomenal trip. We've had some real beautiful scenery, we've had some great mammals, some great wildlife, more moose than I've ever seen at once. I think our total sightings are over 75. Some great images. It's been a really good time. Tomorrow, my clients head home. I've been out at the $1 Million Cowboy Saloon having a good time tonight, enjoying myself. We've had some phenomenal food, but more importantly, I want to talk to you about when to use wide angle lenses for landscape versus a long lens panoramic. Why would you do one versus the other? Stay tuned. I'm going to tell you. Howdy from West Texas. I'm Lee Hoy, professional nature photographer, and this is my YouTube channel, Lee Hoy Photography. I'm an OM System Ambassador, photography workshop instructor for Wildside Nature Tours and Precision Camera and Video, and contributing author for the Journal of Wildlife Photography. Well, one of the things early on in my life as a photographer, nature photographer, that I experienced, I really felt like every grand scene needed a wide angle lens because to me, a grand scene demanded a big lens. But the problem I often found was that a wide angle lens created little tiny pissant mountains or tiny scenes. Because when you think about it, when we use a wide angle lens, we push everything away from us, right? Versus a long lens panoramic, we can still get the same field of view, but we keep the objects in the scene bigger. Because what we want to do is we want to take the viewer of our image into the scene. When we're shooting landscape, we want to reveal some beautiful aspect of the scene. Now, if I have a huge mountain scene with a big grandiose sky, I might want to go a wide angle and emphasize the sky. However, there are many scenes where if we pull out an 8mm or a 12mm lens, what we're doing is we're minimizing the subjects. So let's think about when we might use a wide angle lens versus a long lens panoramic. If we're near the base of a big mountain and it's looming large before us, we might want a wide angle lens because we're so close that a long telephoto wouldn't encompass the whole scene. Or if we have a really big sky that's carrying the scene, then we might want to go with a wide angle lens and minimize the landscape to enhance the sky. But here in Grand Teton, quite often I found that a long lens panoramic image, and it doesn't matter whether it's 2 images or whether it's 20 images, what it does when we use a long lens panoramic image, what we're doing is we are keeping our subject large, but we're showing the same field of view. And by doing that, we transport the viewer of our image into the scene. Whereas a lot of times when we use a wide angle lens, we're pushing the viewer further away from the scene. So it all has to do with field of view, with compression. It has to do with, scope and size. So you don't always want to just pull out a wide angle lens because you have a big scene. Here there's many different pullouts that we can enjoy the Grand Tetons from. And at some point I was using wide angle lens and at some point I was doing panoramics. I love the M.Zuiko 12 to 100 f4.0 IS Pro lens for this very purpose. I also like the 40 to 150. However, it's more about long lens panoramics than it is wide angle, obviously. So the 12 to 100 f4.0 lens is great because I can go from 24 millimeters, 35 millimeter equivalent, to 200 millimeters, 35 millimeter equivalent. And I can both take the viewer to the edge or into the scene. So you don't always want to go wide angle just because you have a big scene. Sometimes you want to maintain the scope or the size or the drama of the scene in front of us. You'll begin to develop this skill with time, with assessment, with experience. And for me, I think about what is it I'm trying to communicate in my image. I love panoramic images. I love showing them. I love displaying them. I think printing panoramic images is often better than printing a regular 4x3 or 3x2 image. And so often we get enveloped in this grand scene in front of us. But when we get home or we look at our images, it doesn't carry the same magnitude, the same strength, the same power as when we stood in that spot. And that's because what we've done by using a wide angle lens is we've minimized the scale. And that's not always bad. It depends on your sky, it depends on your scene, it depends on your proximity. There's no hard and fast rule. Today we were shooting sunset from one of the overlooks here in Grand Teton National Park, and I shot both wide angle and I shot panoramic, long lens, multi-image scenes. Why do I decide when I'm going to do what? Again, it often has to do with my proximity to the subject, the amount of sky that I want to carry in the image, foreground elements, scale, scope of the scene, and ultimately, what is it I'm trying to accomplish? You know, I like to take images that transport the viewer to that location. I grew up not getting to travel a whole lot. And so there are a lot of other people like that. And I want them to look at my images and be transported to that location, that time, that scenario. Sometimes a wide angle lens will do that. And sometimes a multi-image panoramic image is going to do that better. You'll learn this skill over time. And I'm going to show you some images right now about, here's some wide angle images I've taken of Grand Teton this past week. And then I want to show you some of the long lens panoramics. And you will see the difference in scale, scope, size, drama, intensity. So before you just think, well, this is a big scene, big mountains, big sky, and always pull out a wide angle lens, ask yourself, what is it I'm trying to do? What is it I'm trying to accomplish with this image? Because a wide angle lens is not always the best answer. So, I have the 8-25 f4.0. That's great because it's covering 16 to 50 millimeters in 35 millimeter equivalent. I have the 12-100, which is best for going back and forth because 24 millimeters is still a pretty wide lens. And what I have found is that it gives me both options with one lens, particularly when it's super cold. I've got on, liners, glove liners. I've got on mittens, and it's not always easy changing a lens. So having one lens that does both, like the 12-100, is an awesome way to be able to go back and forth. You can see the same scene in front of you and capture it with a wide angle lens and long lens panoramic, and you'll see two very different representations of what's in front of you. So don't always think, I need a wide angle lens. Sometimes you need a medium telephoto. And obviously, if you have one lens that encompasses both, that's going to help you out more. So here, I tend to use the 12-100 a lot. I keep it on my lens more often than the 8-25 so that I have that flexibility, because the distance from many of the pullouts to the Grand Tetons in winter gives me both options. Okay. And I like being flexible. And again, changing lenses in extreme winter conditions can be more challenging. Trying to maintain, keeping your sensor clean, keeping your lens clean. The other night we went out to do star trails and we had to worry about frost forming on our lens elements. So there's all kinds of things that go into consideration whenever you're photographing a landscape. And do you want to change lenses or not? I don't mind changing lenses if necessary, but if I have one lens that's going to help me do a lot, that's going to help. And that for me is the 12-100. Now this video isn't just about the 12-100. It is about knowing when to shoot wide angle and when to shoot long lens panoramic. Think about when you're standing at a scene, and this is one reason why I like shooting on a tripod for landscape, because it makes you slow down, it makes you contemplate, it makes you consider. I like to flip my LCD lens out, my LCD screen, and take a look at the scene in front of me and really think about, what is it I'm trying to accomplish with that particular image? Where do I want to transport the viewer of my image to? Not many people are going to come up here and photograph Grand Tetons in winter. They should. It is spectacular. It's beautiful. And town is all Jackson Hole is all decorated for Christmas. It's lively, it's exciting, it's beautiful. But when you go out there, if you're going to spend time to get out in the cold early in the morning or late in the day, you want to make sure you capture the image and that your viewers see what you want them to see. And making that decision can make or break your image. So, just because you have a grand, big scene in front of you does not mean you always want to grab a wide angle lens. So, when to choose a wide angle lens, when to choose a long lens landscape. Let's review, okay? Number one, what is it you're trying to accomplish with the image? Do you want to take the viewer into the scene, or do you want to push them back to enjoy a giant scope? Do you want to highlight a lot of sky or a lot of foreground? Then a wide angle lens is going to be your best choice. Do I want to keep my mountains or my scene in front of me big, but a wide angle lens would make them too small? Then I'm going to do a long lens panoramic. Do I want my field of view to be larger than even a wide angle lens could accomplish? Well, that's going to be a long lens panoramic. There are a lot of different reasons that we want to consider and contemplate for doing that. I hope that when you go out in the field, you don't just automatically grab a wide angle lens. So take a look at some of these examples I'm going to show. And remember, get out in the field, go out there, capture some visually compelling images, and I'll see you next Sunday. Y'all have a good day. Bye-bye.